In this video we are going to see how to create a JavaScript project. As you can see, if I type the text field and click on save, the entered data can be seen on the table along with the message that says data inserted. Fine, you can see I'm inserting again, click on save, data inserted, and the data is in the table now. If you click on close, it can be removed with the alert message. We are going to use object oriented JavaScript in this tutorial. To follow along, I'll leave the source code in the description. So let's get started. And this is the first object oriented JavaScript project in this playlist. So let's create. So when you unzip the file, this is the file, required file, one index file and one script file. So let me remove all the script file and start from scratch. So we have 3 input field and 1 button. This is a table. We'll have a dynamic, we'll have some duplicate values. So we have 3 input field and 1 submit button inside the form. So let me take all the ID and store it into a notepad so that we can use on the JavaScript. This is form, this is input ID, this is input with ID, and this is again input with ID. And finally we have a div, the T body, which will be dynamically populated. Fine, let's get into the JavaScript. So the first step, on submit, get all the links. So just like jQuery, we are going to use window.onload. When the window is loaded, I want a function to get executed, and this function will simply call the form and add a listener submit to it. Let's call a form document.getElement by ID and store it into a variable. And the variable name will be my form. Fine, now let's add listener, which is submit. So when I click on submit, what I want is, I want to get all the text field from the form. So before that, let me prevent the default behavior. The default behavior is when I click on submit, the hash will be appended on the URL. I don't want that. That's why I'm using e.prevent default along with the console message. If you see, there is no hash over here. So because of the e.prevent default, there is no hash in the URL. So if I click again, you can see the hash is on the URL. I don't want that. To remove it, we would be using e.prevent default. Fine. Now in the submit, we are going to get all the input field values which I have used on the notepad. Let me see why the message is not showing up on the console. Let me hard refresh it, and now you can see it's visible. And each time it is getting incremented, the message is popping up. Fine, now let's get all the input field value on this function and let us store it into a variable. This is the input field for author, this is the input field for book, and this is the input field for book with unique ID, ISBN. Fine, now let me call this also for future use, which is the T body. To get the value, we will be using the value attribute, so a value property. Now let me show you the message. When I click on submit, I want all the 3 input field to be displayed, all the 3 input fields value to be displayed on the console. Now if you click on submit, you will see the value which you have entered will be displayed on the console, and that's working absolutely fine. Now we are going to create a class. So let's create a class with keyword class. Let's give the name as book, and inside that now we are going to pass the text field value to this class by creating an object. To create an object, we would be using a variable name along with the keyword new and the name of the class, and we will be passing all the three input field value to the object, and this object's input field can be accessed using the constructor. So we can access these three value in the constructor. So let's store it into a variable of the class. We need three variable because we are passing three values to the constructor. Fine. Now let me show the object, populated object on button submit. So if you fill the input field and click on save, you can see the object has been populated. Fine. Now we are going to create a UI class. So we need to clear all the field. As you can see, let's create a function called static function. The reason for making static function is we can call them without initializing. Fine. What clear field would do is it will remove all the values in the text field and replace it with nothing, which is, you can see this is how nothings look like. So let me call it. Once I click on submit, I want the text field should get cleared. Now let me remove it and show you. If I type some values and click on save, you see the value. We can see the object, but the values in the text field is still there. To remove it, I'm calling the static class of the class, static function of the class UI. Now you can see the value is also cleared. Now let's create a DisplayData function. It's also would be a static function. The DisplayData function will simply populate the table row. So we know we have already get the t body in the JavaScript with the help of ID. So this tr we are going to dynamically create it inside the t body, which we have identified as dynamic here variable. So with the help of inner HTML property, we'll append the HTML code, which would be table row, which is tr. So in place of static, I'm going to make it dynamic with the help of, I have used backtick. You can see that's only it will allow you to use the template string. So this is the template string. Author name and then the book name. Fine. Now the display data will accept a argument. So once we clear all the field, what I need is I want to pass the object to this function, which is display data. This display data can be accessed over here. So the object has three variables. To access the variable, we would be using dot. So we can access them individually. Fine. Now if you type something, we have already two functions called. The first one will populate and the second one will clear, and that's working fine. Now we want to show a message. Just like the function we have created, we are again going to use the static keyword, and this will have a text and a class name. So if you know the bootstrap, we have a class called alert and alert success. So let's create an element which would be a div. and let me store it into a variable called div, and this div will have a class, and the class is the alert, and then the alert, and then the alert hyphen the passed class name. I have used backtick, it is not single quotes. Fine. Now I'm going to change the inner text and replace it with the argument. Fine. Now I want this div to be appended just above the form, in between the card body and the form. So let's get the card body in the JavaScript. With it's a class name, so document dot get elements by class name. Since we have only one card body, I'm passing the index 0, so it will choose the first card body. In the current document I just have only one card body, so I'm passing 0. So the card body with the help of insert before, and we want to place the div, which is our created div, just before the form. We have already called it in the JavaScript with the help of id. Let me save it, and it won't be useless because we are not calling the function after submit. So when it is UI.message, I want to pass the messages data inserted, and the class is success. There are some predefined classes: primary, warning, danger, and success. It says success is not defined, it's a string, not a variable, so need to pass inside a quotes. And div is not defined, it is strict that what we need to do is we need to have a variable keyword, and we need, it's a div is a keyword also. I'm changing it to divs, and again it says div is not defined, let's have a variable. If you don't declare variable, it is a global variable. Now you can see data inserted, and if you click again you can see the data inserted is appending. We don't want that. What we need is we want the message to get disappeared after 3 seconds. So for that, let's create a set timeout function. Let's call a set timeout function with a default function, the function, and the time, which is 1 second. After 1 second the function to get triggered, and that function will simply remove the div. Fine. If you click on save, after 1 second it got removed, and again after 1 second it got removed. So now let's add a validation. So the validation would be, when I click on save, I want to check whether all the input fields are filled. If it's filled, then pass the object to the function, or else show the message, alert message. So we are going to use the or operator. Either one of the input field is blank, I want the error message to show up, and the if condition simply says either one of the input field is blank. I want to show a alert message with the help of class messages. So with the help of class UI, and it has a method called messages. And if it is blank, I want the text to be input field cannot be blank, and the class I'm going to pass is danger. Danger is simply red color, and I want to return. That means I need to skip this function. After 3 seconds, after 1 second, it got disappeared, and that's working. Now let's get into the next step, which is add event delegation, which is closing and removing the table row. If you click on X, the whole table row need to be deleted. So for that, we are going to add listener to the parent. Let's create a class. So this class will be dynamically appended into the T body. Let me show you. So if you click on save, the T table row will have a class, sorry, the button will have a class, close it. Since the button is dynamically defined, we cannot directly call it. So to call the class, what we need to do is we need to call the parent, and we are going to pass the click event to it. And with the help of e.target, we will get to know where we have clicked on the parent. If I type something and click on save, there's an error. Let's see what it is. Dynamic is not defined. Let's see why. Let me have a variable keyword to all the variables. And let me call, everything seems fine. Let me check again. Dynamic is not defined. Why it's not defined? Let me call the dynamic div over here and check. Again it says it's not defined. Let me see why. It is because the listener is getting executed before the document is loaded. Fine. What I did is I placed my add listener inside the window.onload. Now it's working. Now if you see, wherever I click, I can get the element. So we'll pass this e.target to a function inside the UI class, and that function I'll name it as delete row. Let me pass this element. So let me create a function inside the UI class. It's a static class, and we are passing the parameter element. So we will be checking whether this element has a class. Close it. Element.classList.contains, whether it has a class. It's a function which is this class, whether it has a class. Then show me the alert message, or let me display a console message. And it will say clicked on button. Fine. Let me check again whether it's working. If I need is, if I click on button, it should say clicked on button, and it is saying perfectly as we wanted. Now if it is true, yeah, it is working. If it is true, what I need is I want to get to the TR. Now at present we are inside a TD, and inside the TD we have button. So we need to get to the grandparent. So it's a child, so the parent is TD and the grandparent is TR. To get into the grandparent, we would be using parent element twice, and I'm going to remove it. I think we have made a mistake. Remove button. We just have to use the element, not the whole class. I should not have used the variable name remove button. I should directly get the element from the parameter. Let me remove the whole line. And now it would work. If we click on X, it will get removed. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening. And before deleting, I want the message to show up. So let me call the UI class with function message, and let me change the text to data deleted, or you can say row deleted. Now if you delete the row, along with the row deleted, you will get a message. says data deleted, that which is row deleted, and see row deleted shows up, and after 3 seconds or after 1 second it disappears. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening.